All right, welcome to another Coaches Roundtable. These are now on Spotify. Can you believe it? Look, Mum, we've made it. Is this episode 11? I believe it is.
Something like that. Who really knows at this point?
Who knows? We've done so many. All right, I reckon this will be relatively short. So should we just kick off straight away with the first question?
Let's go.
All right, then. Question number 1 is from Special K. Some of you might know her as Kerry or Keza or Kez. She's got a lot of nicknames. So she has asked, at what point would you start considering using a belt/knee sleeves?
It's a good question.
It is a very good question.
You want to take that one away?
I'm happy for you to take it away.
And who never uses a belt and barely uses knee sleeves? Versus who always uses a belt and always uses bloody knee sleeves.
Yeah.
I think it's understanding what they're used for. Obviously the belt is probably like if you put a gun to my head and said you can only have a belt or knee sleeves, I'd go probably with a belt. Obviously the belt is basically for kind of allowing you to increase your intra-abdominal pressure. So in regular people terms, that means that, you can stay stiffer through the torso. And essentially it kind of allows you to produce a little bit more force through a little bit of magic. But essentially you're looking at like a small increase to strength and power. So I don't know, like if I had, let's say squatting, what would I be able to do beltless versus with a belt? I feel like probably at most a belt might give you an extra couple of percent. No more than 5, I wouldn't have thought. No more than 5%, thereabouts. So, and that's, using it kind of correctly and getting it fitted properly. As for knee sleeves, people, depends really on the knee sleeves. Obviously you've got sleeves, you've got knee wraps as well. And sometimes, you can wear them for a little bit of extra support. They'll definitely help you kind of getting out of the hole in a squat because essentially it's a little bit more of a rebound effect. But also for warmth as well. You'll see like some people wear really, really thin knee sleeves just to kind of keep the joint warm. So it kind of depends what you're using it for. Wraps can obviously be tightened or loosened. So generally people use wraps when they need more support than what a knee sleeve will provide. You do see it quite often in kind of like heavies and super heavies. They'll, tend to, you usually see more wraps up there. But by and large, like, so yeah, a little bit more rebound, a little bit more support for the knee, keep things warm, that kind of thing. Again, can help at kind of maximal attempts, whether that's snatch, clean and jerks, squats, that kind of thing. But can also get in the way. I use my kind of knee sleeves for clean and jerks, but not for snatch. Purely because with clean and jerks, it's a little bit more bounce out of the kind of catch and then the front squat. But for snatch, just kind of gets in the way and also gives me a little bit too much rebound in the catch, which you really don't want in a snatch. You just want to be a little bit more stable. So in terms of when you should start using them, basically like as long as you're technically reasonably proficient, I think that you can, start having a go. Obviously, doing it before you get to the point that you're technically proficient, you're never going to be able to take advantage of them. You're never going to, for example, in the back squat, if you don't really know how to brace correctly already, then, who cares? Or if you're already, you're adding a couple of percent onto your back squat, like, every week or every month because you're still new to the game, then there's not really a whole lot of point in investing in the belt because the difference is going to be marginal. Kind of even with knee sleeves as well, it's like timing the bounce and more about kind of like timing that kind of thing. Like, it's not, a knee sleeve is not really going to help you all that much unless of course, well, even then, if your knees are sore or if they're painful, then, just putting knee sleeves on is kind of like, it's probably a bigger issue if you're a beginner and your knees are sore. So don't use them as like a plaster. But in terms, yeah, I'd say like once you get kind of like technically proficient, then you can actually start to take advantage of them. And then they're of benefit, and then they're worth the investment. At what point do you become technically proficient? Kind of depends on the person, but like as a general rule of thumb, probably once you've been lifting for about a year, thereabouts, then, you know, have a play. But, you know, again, don't expect, you know, the more equipment you get does not make you a better lifter. You know, it's an individual thing at the end of the day as well. So, you know, but with your team, like, you know, borrow a belt or borrow their sleeves or that kind of thing, and get a feel for kind of what you prefer and what works for you, and then go from there, really. Sorry, that was a really long-winded answer.
I just want to add in, if someone asks to use my knee sleeves, I will always say no. And you do not want to share my knee sleeves. But I think you summarised that really well. I don't really have a lot to add. I think the important point that you made, which is right at the start, was you need to understand why you're using that piece of equipment. And I think I don't really need to say much else, because you already covered belts for intra-abdominal pressure. And I think realistically, like you also mentioned, it gives you such a little amount of advantage if you if you aren't already proficient and already strong enough. Like, for example, if you don't do any kind of core, like specific core work, or, you know, you don't learn how to brace properly, and you're all over the shop in a squat, a belt is not going to help you. Like, it's not, like you said, you know, it's like putting a plaster over a gun wound. You need to figure out what the issue is first before you then look for a quick fix. So I think it comes down to the person, doesn't it? It depends, you know, what you need to use it for, and why you think you need to use it. And I think after that, like you said, you can try it out, and then if you don't feel like it's doing anything, then don't use it. You don't need to use equipment. I slightly different to Alex. So when I first started weightlifting, I actually had a hairline fracture of both my coccyx when I was doing a front squat. And this was whilst I was wearing like a Velcro kind of belt, which I still have. And this is when I first... What's that?
It wasn't because you were doing CrossFit.
Well, I mean, I don't really know. I was doing a front squat. I don't know what happened. I didn't brace properly, and something popped. But yeah, obviously after that, I'd actually learned how to create intra-abdominal pressure, how to brace properly, how to actually squat properly. And since then, I've not worn a belt, and that was 4 or 5 years ago. Whereas with knee sleeves, generally, I'll wear my knee sleeves after maybe 60-70% is on the bar. And I often find with knee sleeves, it's more of a confidence thing. Because I've torn both my ACLs. It's kind of like I do like to keep them warm, yes, but it's also more just to give me a little bit of confidence that my knees have some extra support to them.
Yeah, they're not going to like explode.
Yeah. I generally, like you, I don't generally wear my my sleeves for snatches because it feels too restrictive. Whereas with the clean and jerk, I think you can get away with it because you require a little bit more elasticity out of the bottom. Whereas in the snatch, you need to be a slightly stiffer. You might need to take your time a little bit.
Yeah, for me, it's just, you know, it's the elasticity in the bottom. It's like for the clean and jerk, that's great because usually you're straight out of the bottom. But with the snatch, like you might sit about there for a little bit. And so having caught it, and then, you know, the knee sleeves actually cause you to bounce up a little bit. It's just not ideal.
Yeah, exactly. To be fair as well, having said that, during this lockdown, I've been lifting, but I haven't really been doing a lot of ollie lifting. I've only been using my sleeves for squats, and I haven't used my sleeves for any kind of cleans or front squats or anything like that. Just because, as you and I know, I've been trying to work on my my bounce out of the bottom because I currently have no elasticity. My hips are very tight.
Lad. He just catches it. He's
stiff boy. So yeah, it's a good question though. I don't know if we really kind of gave you the right answer, but we gave you the answer that we would always give to people is it's worth trying out if you want to see. But to be honest, if you can get away without using them, you don't need them.
Yeah. I think just like that's a beginner as well, because like a kind of mid-range belt would probably cost you about like 50 quid, something like that.
Yeah.
Mid-range is about 30, 40. What, 30, 40? Yeah.
So like, wait, knee sleeves are like 60 quid now.
Yeah.
If you're looking at like SBD, A7, can't think of any others. There's loads of others, but yeah, generally if you're looking at trying to get knee sleeves, I'd get things like 2-ply or 3-ply. 1-ply is not really going to do a lot. And I think with knee wraps, I don't really think many people lift enough to warrant wearing knee wraps, if I'm honest.
Yeah. The thing is, knee wraps, it's like they can be really, really good, and the kind of adjustability is really, really useful. But they're just a pain to put on and take off. You know, and when you're like training, or if you're in a competition environment, and you know the bloody thing keeps coming unraveled, and you're just panicking because you're next on, and like one of your knees is wraps. Like, nah. At least with sleeves, like, you know, I find the issue with me is actually getting them on, and but once they're on, they're on.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly. All right, good question. Next question is from Lily. And her question is an interesting one, because I think this really will come down to preference, but I also wanted to touch a little bit on kind of sleep and a couple of other things. But the question is there an ideal time of day to train?
Oh, good question. 6 a.m. Done.
Yeah. Honestly, in terms of without being a cop out, I generally would say it depends. Like, I genuinely think that
I'm gonna get some t-shirts with just "it depends"
it
on.
It depends. Hey coach, I've got a question. Answer. It always depends. No, I feel like that's kind of a lazy answer, but thing is, it's kind of, sort of, it isn't at the same time, because it really does depend on your preference. If you are a morning person, you're going to want to train a little bit earlier, right? If you wake up at 6 a.m. naturally, you don't want to train at like 7, 8 p.m. because you've already been awake for God knows how long. But then some people like training in the evening as well. And I think it just comes down to preference. Some people like training when they haven't eaten or had caffeine. Some people like having at least 2 or 3 coffees in them before they train, as well as, you know, breakfast and lunch. But I also think it comes down to, have you ever heard of the circadian rhythm?
Yeah. Like kind of night cycle thing.
Yeah. And I know it's quite an interesting, I don't know enough about it to warrant me having a long discussion about it on this podcast, but it's definitely something that might be of interest, especially if Lily asked the question. I can certainly have a look into it a little bit deeper, but from my understanding, the circadian rhythm is essentially like your 24-hour body clock. And there's certain times throughout your day where, for example, like in the AM, your testosterone might peak. And then in the PM, obviously melatonin increases to try and make you sleepy, etc., etc. And generally it should be relatively the same in most individuals. But then it also comes down to whether you're a morning person or a night person. And I think that will obviously depend on your circadian rhythm. So from what, I mean, personally for me, I prefer training between sort of like a 10 and 2 window, between 10 and 2. It doesn't matter if it's like a little bit before that or a little bit after that. Like, yeah, I just generally prefer to train between 10 and 2. Anything after 3, 4 o'clock, and I'm like, unless I've had an excessive amount of caffeine and, you know, I slept well the night before and I haven't had work, because again, that plays into, if you've been sat on your ass for 8 hours, or not sat on your ass, but you've been working hard, sat on your bum for 8 hours, it's probably not going to be that conducive to you coming in and having an amazing session. Having said that, if you don't want to get up at 6 a.m. to train before you start work at 9, don't do that, because it's obviously not going to help you train. So I think generally it comes down to just what you find comfortable. some people don't have the structure to just take 2 hours out of their day at 12 p.m. to go and lift at lunchtime because they have a full-time job or, you know, whatever. That's my 2 cents anyway.
No, that's fair. I think like I've always preferred training in the mornings, sometimes like really early mornings, like 6 a.m. Because that's the point at which the gym opens. But I find generally, like if you leave it towards the afternoon, my training sessions get a lot more, regular is not the right word, variable, you know? Because it's just like stuff goes on throughout the day. Maybe you eat well, maybe you don't, maybe you're a bit stressed, maybe you're not, maybe there's, you know, you're trying to train, but you're thinking about like, you know, this kind of meeting happening or this email that you've got to get back to, or, you know, whatever it is. And I find that makes it a little bit, it's less consistent.
Yeah.
But like, you know, 6 a.m., roll out of bed, roll into the gym. You know, you're not thinking about all of that stuff. All the kind of like day-to-day life stuff is just way, you know, it's not happening yet. Just think about it later. You know, I find as well that like, especially in kind of like commercial gyms and such, it's a lot quieter at 6 a.m. Which, you know, you get first in, you can bag a platform, you're good to go. And it just kind of means that like that training's done. You're not trying to fit it in during the rest of the day. You've got your day off to a good start. You know, you've already like gone out and accomplished something, you're feeling good. And I just find like I'd much prefer to train then than to train in like an afternoon where like, you know, I might be sluggish, I might be tired, you know, you might have, you know, gone to work and had a day of work and then you don't really feel like training, you just want to go home and have dinner and go to bed. And yeah, I don't know, I've always been a fan of kind of like doing it in the morning. I'm not really a morning person, don't really like them. But I just find that, yeah, training first thing works. And
Get
you know,
out of the way, yeah.
like, I think like, I want to say, you know, because arguably you're strongest in the afternoon. It was to do with your what you mentioned about the circadian rhythm. I want to say it's between 1 and 2 p.m. That's probably completely wrong though. But at the end of the day, like, you know, does it matter? Because even if you're like less 10% stronger in the afternoon, right? It doesn't mean that, you know, you're going to be making more progress if you train in the afternoon. Because if you train in the morning, yeah, you might be a little bit like weaker, but you're still going to put your body through the gauntlet, you know?
Yeah.
You're going to, I can't see how, you know, training at a particular time is going to lead to much of a performance increase.
Yeah.
Unless, you know,
yeah.
taking into account like other factors and things.
I think it's definitely like, I think the point you're getting to is it's definitely minimal. It has minimal impact. If you train at like 10 and there's some research that says that strength peaks at 4 p.m, I really don't think there's going to be that much difference if it's day to day, you know, like, and also, like you said, it's your strength can be so variable between day to day. Like you could, on one day, you could be squatting 140, absolutely no problem. Try and do that 2-3 days later when you've got no fatigue after you've recovered. You try and do the same thing. You might find that it's not the same. It doesn't move the same. Or you might find, shit, man, 140 is moving quick. Let's go to 150. But it's not always that linear relationship. It doesn't work like that. And I don't know if there's a research paper on this, but I also read a couple of years ago that in some cases, your strength can fluctuate day to day between 10 and 20%. You imagine percentage of that on the barbell. It's probably not a relationship between percentage on a barbell and actual percentage of strength. I don't know how they would quantify that. I assume that they probably would have used maximal force production with like a force plate or a isometric test or something, but that's quite a large amount. 10% is
that's a big chunk.
Yeah.
No, I would argue that, like, you know, if you roll out of bed, you're probably not at your strongest, you know. I know, like, that door over there is a nightmare to get open at the best of times. And so, like, when you just woken up, just trying to get the fucking handle around is a pain. The rest of the day it's fine. But like, I figure, you know, if you can hit your openers in an early morning session, then whether it's a morning, midday, afternoon, or evening competition, you're going to be fine, you know. It gives you a little bit of margin as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, they
But
definitely does fluctuate through the day though.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'd definitely say that I'm strongest between 10 and 4. I don't care what 10 and 2, sorry, not 10 and 4. I don't care what research says. But again, it depends, because research is only based on, although it's based on a population, all those populations are in effect individual case studies. So just because they've taken 18 to 35-year-olds does not mean that every single 18 to 35-year-old is going to be strong at 5 p.m. because it doesn't work like that, because everyone has different lives. If you had 100 18 to 35-year-olds who were grown out of a test tube and they all lived in a lab and they all trained at the same time and they all ate the same, this sounds like a communist country. And hold on a second.
See what
Yeah, it doesn't work like that. So I'd just say, first of all, do it whenever you can, whenever you feel good, and also whenever work allows you, whenever your life allows you to. Because we also have to realize that as much as we still want to train and think like elite lifters, we have to realize that we are not elite lifters. Like, it doesn't mean to say that you shouldn't think like you are, and you shouldn't train like you are, and eat like you are, and sleep like you are. But elite lifters, that is their job. Our job is not to lift. Our job is to go to work 9 to 5 or whatever the hell you do for work, and then to go and lift. It's more of a hobby than it is. We're hobbyists. And it's not to say just because we're hobbyists, we shouldn't focus on trying to nail the things that elite athletes do. But generally, the odds are more stacked against us than they are for elite athletes, because it's
you've not got many resources behind you.
No, exactly.
You've not got the capital, you've not got, the coaches and the support staff, physio, that kind of thing, the training hall. Like, you don't have any of that. You just have, But, again, as you say, the principles are the same, whether you're, an elite athlete or, just somebody who's just there for the social aspect. It's like, progressive overload, recover well, eat well, have some good training partners, have a decent coach.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the other thing as well is, and this is not to take away from any elite lifters, is I feel like sometimes with people who do work full-time jobs and they are still very good athletes, it takes so much discipline. I'm not talking about hard work, because hard work and work ethic is the sort of thing that you have to do in the gym, where you turn up and you're tired and you still put the work in. That's work ethic. Discipline is everything outside of the gym. Your nutrition, your sleep, your recovery, let's just go out for one beer. No, I'm good, thanks. I've got training early in the morning. That's your discipline. And it doesn't mean to say that just because you have a full-time job, you shouldn't still be disciplined if that's what you really care about. I'm not forcing everyone to become elite lifters, and you have to realize that not everyone will be, but it doesn't mean to say that you shouldn't be pushed towards trying to at least better yourself. Even if you're not elite, it doesn't matter. You still have to think and do. I think we got a bit off topic of the actual question, but I reckon I think we answered it. I'm sure Lily will be able to let us know if we didn't. Right.
It didn't help me whatsoever.
Yeah, that was a rubbish question. No, I'm joking. It's a good question though, and I think it generally just comes down to individuals. Right. Have we got time for one more?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. I want to pose a question.
Okay. Oh, Christ.
Okay. I'm just trying to find it because I wrote it to you this morning. And actually, let's go with, because I asked you two this morning. So I reckon let's go with the one that's the most appropriate for this time period, seeing as we now just found out we're coming out of lockdown on the 2nd. And then next week we can always cover the second one, because I feel like the first one that I asked you might be slightly long-winded. So here's the second one. What do we do next week when gyms open?
You send it.
Send it. Go full send.
Go full send. Again, it depends if you sends. if you've been able to kind of like train like you would usually, then, you know, potentially you could. But like, I think by and large, you know, people, they're dealing with limited equipment, limited kind of resources, you know, not being able to get as much out of their training. And so coming back into the gym on the first day and just going ham doesn't sound like the best recipe in my mind. I think that might leave you a little bit injury prone. I'd say just work it back up from when you get in.
Yeah.
Give it a week or two to kind of get back into your usual training schedule, and then go from there, really. But yeah, because I've been squatting and pressing and doing lots of strength movements. I've got a bar and some bumpers, but you know, I can't snatch or clean and jerk in my living room, so I've just been kind of like leaving that for now. So I know it's going to take me like probably a week to kind of get back to, you know, just to be able to snatch and clean and jerk properly again. So I don't think I'm going to go ham, although I always say that and then I always do. But so yeah, I'd say, you know, work it up slowly. You know, don't take it easy. Don't put your feet up, but you know, don't be stupid either.
Yeah.
Like a good balance between the two.
Yeah, I definitely think they're just gradually introducing load and intensity. Yeah. It doesn't have to be over like 6 months. Like, you don't have to take the mick, but also, you know, you have to realize that you've got time. I hope to God that gyms don't close next year. I'm saying we've got time to be optimistic, but you do, you know, you've got more than you realize. And also, even if you haven't trained for the last 3 weeks, I think you'd be surprised at how little strength you've lost if you slowly reintegrate lifting over the next 2 to 3 weeks. I think, to be honest, with weightlifting generally, if you have been able to get access to equipment and you haven't been going that heavy, hopefully your coaches have been giving you sort of like more volume or some technical work and stuff. And I think that sort of stuff will lend itself really well to come back into the gym, because you've been practicing the movements. So it's more about like movement literacy than it is about actually trying to put weight on the bar. And then again, it's just slowly introducing load over the coming weeks. But yeah, just chat to your coach and just figure out what you think could be best. But the only thing I'd say is just, I wouldn't go ham. There's no need to. Like, it's not like the gyms are going to open on the 2nd and they're going to close on the 3rd. I mean, I'd hope not.
You don't know these days.
If that's the case, ignore everything we've just said. You've got Christmas to recover.
Pull both your hamstrings, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. But yeah, like you said, just reintegrate things. Just see how things move. It's also a good opportunity if you haven't been doing any training, just to focus on things that you're shit at as well. You know, by actually doing technical work, not just going, oh, this feels really good, and putting more weight on the bar. But having said that, sometimes, you know, you could do that.
Yeah. It's a week of technical work is probably a pretty good prescription anyway.
Yeah, a week. Yeah, with some strength work as well. You know, just gradually build some. It doesn't have to be anything super fancy. It could be, you know, some squats and pulls, some presses, plus some technical lifts. You know, just something to kind of get those legs and the back and the shoulders and just kind of hardwired to get back to what they were used to do, which is to shift in, right? Put it over your head. But yeah, cool.
Sounds good.
Should we cap it there?
So I don't have any questions. So.
All right, sweet. All right, we're going to stop there, guys. So thanks for tuning in to episode 11. Even though we are coming out of lockdown next week, I think we're going to look to carry these on, right, Al?
Yeah, no, sounds good. I think, you know, they're quite fun to organize, and people keep sending us questions, so we're going to keep giving answers.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. So we should catch you guys next week. This will go out on YouTube and also on our Spotify now. Oi. All right. See you next week, guys. Peace.
Catch you later.